Hi, I'm Rachelle Mee-Chapman, and this is Relig-ish, where we help you create right fit spiritual practices in a post-church world. Today I want to talk a little bit more about grief, mourning, and recovery, which last week we looked at what are some of our cultural rituals that help us do that in the wake of events like the Boston Marathon bombing or the China earthquake or any kind of inner city violence. And one of the things that I've been thinking about is how much our culture would prefer not to experience any kind of tragedy. We would like to not be too close to death, and we would like to not be too close to illness, and we tend to sort of numb out and avoid those things. I mean, just the way that we treat our elderly just really shows how disconnected we are and how unskilled we are at dealing with tragedy and loss. And I had an experience, and you know how much I love Church of Art. I really have found art to be the main place that I hear preaching. You have to use art to preach. And a few weeks ago, I was at the National Geographic exhibit in Las Vegas, and they were showing their 50 most important photographs of all times, and so many of them were so beautiful, and they were images of such tragedy, or they had some sort of tragic element involved. And in one of them, it was an image of Jane Goodall, the great researcher of apes, and she was talking to this ape named Gregoire, and he had been abused, and she was kind of nursing him back to health, but it was still very unsafe to be near him. And he was reaching his arm out from between the bars of his cage, and she had tipped her head down to touch her forehead to his fingers. And the photographer said that this was a very dangerous thing for her to do, because he could have grabbed her and pulled her against the bars, hit her head against the bars of the cage. And it was just this beautiful, light-filled moment of vulnerability and risk, and the risk to trust. And I thought, that's it, isn't it? We don't get to have beauty without tragedy. We can't choose one or the other. They're two parts of life, the light and the dark, life and death, beginnings and end. And if we don't develop skills to be present to tragedy, to process tragedy, to say, yes, I will feel this tragedy, then we will also miss out on the beauty. So it's just something I was hoping you might chew on a little bit this week in the face of tragic news, personal, local, or international. And I hope that we can find some skills together to be present to the tragedy, so we can also be fully present to the beauty. If you're interested in what some of those cultural skills might be that we've already developed, I'd encourage you to watch last week's episode of Relig-ish, where we identified 4 cultural rites and rituals for grief and mourning. And while you explore this thought process, I hope that you will get curious, that you'll trust where your gut is leading you, and that whatever you do, you will live from a place of love. Amen. Amen.